Health and peace and happiness for everyone. Ashreinu, how good and beautiful is our heritage. Parashat B'chukotai Tafshin Pei Bet. In the years before the establishment of Medinat Israel, 3 times the British Mandate issued a white book limiting the numbers of Jews allowed into Eretz Israel. One of those times was in the month of Iyar Tafresh Tzadik 1930, in the week leading up to Shabbat Parashat B'chukotai. The chief rabbinate, led by Arav Yaakov Meir and Arav Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Cook, instructed the public to close shops and businesses in the middle of the day, and that the public should convene in Batei HaKnesset for tefillah, slichot, and tehillim, and the rabbis should give drashot relating to the situation. Harav Kook in his drasha mentioned Parashat HaShavua, the Tochecha, and the end of the Tochecha. The main part of the parasha is a list of harsh punishments that Am Yisrael will suffer from when we don't keep the mitzvot of Hashem. But after this long list of harsh punishments, the Torah says that Hashem did not decree to wipe out Am Yisrael, and Hashem says, "Bezacharti, I will remember Yaakov and Yitzchak and Avraham, ve'ha'aretz ezkor, I will remember Eretz Yisrael." Says Rav Kook, in the history of Am Yisrael, there are non-Jewish nations who think that they will overcome, that they will destroy Am Yisrael, that they will decide the destiny and the fate of Am Yisrael. But at the end of the day, in the long run, Am Yisrael will always overcome, because Hashem remembers the covenant. The covenant between Hashem and Israel is eternal. Harav Kook also mentions the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat. The Gemara there says in Daf Nun Hey that sometimes zechut avot tama, the merits, the rights, the zchuyot that we have from our forefathers, sometimes because of severe sins of Am Yisrael, we've wasted those merits. We have emptied out that bank account. And this is, the Gemara says, this is what happens at the end of Beit HaMikdash HaRishon. Just before Beit HaMikdash HaRishon, the first temple, is destroyed, we have wasted our zchut avot. But the Tosfot there say in Masechet Shabbat, zechut avot tama, brit avot lo tama. The merits of our fathers, we erased them. But the covenant, the brit between Hashem and Am Yisrael is eternal, and that is never wasted. Sometimes there are painful times in the history of Am Yisrael, big downs in the history of Am Yisrael. But the story of Am Yisrael never ends, it continues. Our experience when we read Parashat HaTochecha and Parashat B'chukotai is difficult, is painful. It's very hard to listen to this list of harsh punishments, and we even read it quietly because it's hard for us to listen to these words of the Torah. But it doesn't end there. The parasha continues with the promise of Hashem that the covenant is eternal. The parasha continues with more mitzvot to Am Yisrael and moves on to Sefer Bamidbar, to the continued journey of Am Yisrael towards Eretz Yisrael. This is the story of Am Yisrael. Even when there are painful, difficult times, we know that always, eventually, in the long run, Am Yisrael will overcome, and the covenant between Hashem and Am Yisrael is eternal. So should we just sit back and watch history as it unfolds and be happy that even when there are difficult times, after that there will come good times? Certainly not. Not only Hashem remembers the covenant with Am Yisrael, we have to remember, we must remember the covenant with Hashem. Of course, even if we don't do the right thing, and Am Yisrael will have difficult times, we will at the end overcome. It will be, even if the journey is long, at the end we will overcome. But how long do we want to make this journey? We can have a major influence on moving this journey forward in the right direction. And these are the two sides of the relationship between Hashem and Am Yisrael. On the one hand, at the end of the day, there is an eternal covenant, a brit that is never severed between Hashem and Am Yisrael. On the other hand, it is very much in our hands to help this process move forward in the right direction. In our days, we have seen the great difficulties and pains that Am Yisrael suffers, but we have also seen that the process, the history of Am Yisrael is moving in a positive direction, and it is very much in our hands to help Hashem move this process forward in a good way, leading us to the fulfillment of the covenant between Hashem, the brit between Hashem and Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.